And welcome to another edition of the Z-Axis, the FPS+Z podcast. And as always, much to talk about with an all-star panel of guests. And I'm Winners with the One. I'm going to go down the list and bring you everybody, and they will tell you a little bit about themselves. And then we'll talk about some of the cool things happening in the world of FPS+Z games. And there are a few games to talk about, and we will be talking about them. We've got Application One here. Hello, man. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing very well. A bit ill, but still well. And
Cool.
about like games that I've played.
Sure, yeah. Tell us a little about yourself.
Well, I started the whole FPS+Z games with Tribes Vengeance. That's probably a bit of an odd one for most people, but I was like, what was I, 13, 14? So I was okay with a grappler, basically. It was all new to me, so that was a great game for me.
Yeah.
And then later on, I moved on to Legions, which started as Fallen Empire Legions, but then became Legions Overdrive. It's pretty hard for me to pick which one I enjoyed the most, to be honest, because like Tribes Vengeance is very nostalgic for me, and Legions is just the game where competitive really started going on for me. But yeah, if I really have to pick, I guess Legions, because that's still alive for me. And yeah, that's kind of it.
Cool, yeah. And of course, a lot of the Legions guys moved on to a new game called Midair, which, of course, we'll be talking about that at length here during the show. So good to have you on. We've got from he's back, everybody. DavidBowie is here. Do not listen to the rumors. DavidBowie is here. How are you, sir?
Doing well, man. Can't kill a space alien, right? Come back from the dead. Yeah, thanks for having me on. A little background. I guess I started playing FPS+Z back with Tribes 1 back in the day. Then Tribes 2, Tribes Vengeance, not so much. Then in TA played comp for Egocentric and did some casting. And so of course I was really excited and threw down the bucks to play Midair.
Cool. Yeah, you're in the early access with quite a few people, which I think that was, wow, close to $200, but so far people seem to be pretty happy with it. But yeah, we'll be talking about that, as I said, more as we go along the line here. Qualm is here, and how are you, man?
I am doing fantastic. Thank you, Winters with the One. My Tribes pedigree started with Ascend, but I've gone back and played the whole gamut by this time. I'm playing Midair now, actually right now too, as we speak.
Oh, you're in the middle of a game right now?
I'm not in a pug or anything, I'm just messing around, but yeah. Yeah, that's me.
Cool. Well, I guess to start things off, we've talked about the looming death of Tribes Ascend for a while, and it keeps on going, but guys, this time I think it may be the true end for Tribes Ascend. Hi-Res Sean, who was the spearhead dude behind the Out of the Blue patch that just came out, has left Hi-Res, and he did say that they are discussing one more patch for the game, but in talking to people, I think there's still some issues right now. There's a lot of crashes with the servers and stuff, and if I wouldn't get dinged for copyright, I would probably play that Sarah McLachlan in the Arms of an Angel song right here, but this may be it for TA, guys. Your thoughts?
Game dead.
She has been pretty dead for a while, but the Out of the Blue, which I do think was a good update, has split the community into people that like and don't like it. And now the only person who is actively helping to maintain that update is jumped ship. I don't know, I think the ship is sinking for good now.
Yeah. I mean, what are the numbers like? Are people, like, can you go on and find a server with 25 people in it, like, pretty much whenever still?
I'd have to reinstall the game to tell you.
I played it like 2 weeks ago at least, like a pub, and there were two going on, two full ones, one low level, one higher level. And I mean, it's more alive than Legions, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's like better than Tribes Vengeance, like 1 month after it came out. So if there's still a server full of people, then I guess you can't say it's fully dead. I think it's just somehow zombieing on, like some kind of tribal ghost.
I think it's dependent on region a lot. One thing I will say about, you got to hand it to the Euros. They will stay with the game much longer, especially a shooter game, than we do in North America. I don't know why we're so fickle about games here. It's just flavor of the month kind of thing. But, you know, I know that they did a European draft tournament a while back, and that may be the last big tournament we'll see for Tribes of Sin. It's sad, you know, a lot of us, I met most of you guys through Tribes of Sin, and, you know, we had a lot of good times in the game. And so, although there are many mixed feelings, and we have discussed those at length in the past, this may be the end of the line. On the other hand, guys, Hi-Rez is working on their Android mobile game called the impressively named Jetpack Fighter.
Yeah, no, I heard about that. I remember when that was originally, not announced, but leaked, I guess. Someone in the Tribes community got their hands on, like, Hi-Rez trying to get the copyright for that name, and they all thought it was a new Tribes game.
Well, sure, Jetpack Fighter, right? Yeah, it just seems...
Yeah, it's the right conclusion to make. It's just unfortunate. It was a funny thread to follow when we found out, though.
Oh, dang, it's full of anime girls.
That sounds like my kind of game.
Oh, now you have my interest. Yeah, okay, I might have to check that out. But yeah, I kind of agree, Qualm. I think that it was a good effort. It was a good idea to try to jumpstart the game. I mean, you know, it came out of the blue, literally, so that's why they called it that, I suppose. But it was a good effort to try to just kind of change everything around and regenerate some interest. But yeah, it had I think the lifetime that it's had, we had some good moments in it, and there were times when people thought it might be the next big esport, but history will record that it didn't. But we had a good time at the very least, so that was cool. But in the meantime, we have Midair, which I want to congratulate the guys at Archetype Studios. Midair did make its nut on the Kickstarter, and so they got fully funded and then some. And one of those things, we were talking about this earlier, that they made enough that one of the stretch goals was that another game mode will be added. And there are several potential game modes. The two in the front running right now are Duel and what they're calling Jackpot, which, if you're familiar with these the games in the past of the Tribes, you would know as Team Rabbit 2. Now, that is very exciting to me, potentially.
They also had Hunters as a possibility, I think. I'm actually, I like that game mode a lot, at least more than Duel, but it doesn't seem to have a lot of fans.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of Duel guys, and they're lobbying hard for Duel, but I always enjoyed Team Rabbit too. One of my favorite micro genres of games is futuristic sports. And so with the advent of things like Rocket League, which has been, a phenomenal success, much more than anybody had ever expected or hoped, that maybe there'll be more interest towards something like the Jackpot mode. But you guys are all in the early access right now. I'd just like to get your overall thoughts about how the game feels and everything. Usually we would have some of the actual Midair guys here, but we do not. So this is all about the players. So just your thoughts about how the game plays so far and how they're addressing the things that are getting fixed here in very early alpha.
I can kick it off. I think first impressions are the game is a lot of fun. It feels a lot more like T1, T2, which is a good thing. The movement, I think, is harder, which is going to make it probably a little tough to sell to a mass audience, but it just feels so much better. And then I really like the weapons a lot. The balance between disc and chain, which was so off in Tribes Ascend, I think is fixed. It's back to T1, T2, where it's the chain is not always superior. There's a reason to use that ring launcher, and in fact, people tend to use that and go for mid-airs is often one of the most effective ways to win a duel. So I think that the things are going pretty well with it so far, and first impressions, it's a lot of fun.
Cool. Qualm,
Yeah.
what about you?
I agree with Dave. There's a lot that the game is doing right now. There's a few things it's doing wrong, of course, but I think they have a really solid start, and I think with a few tweaks, it'll be the most, not only the most correct, but the most physically fun Tribes game, like tribal FPS+Z we've had, maybe ever.
Wow, that's a strong recommendation. Application 1.
Yeah, I'm like all the same with me. It just feels very good. It feels very fluid as well. The weapons, as said, currently just feel really good. The sniper, which is always a big point for me because I hate hit scan. The sniper feels great. It's not hit scan. It's projectile based. You have to really lead it, especially with long shots, obviously. And yeah, it's just like Qualm said, the start is just so good that yeah, I can only see it getting better from here, because if they've already just made the base as what it currently has with the physics going on, it's just that you know that immediately, like, okay, they're on the right track. So what's next is kind of the question.
Yeah, and I like that you guys keep bringing up feel, because that's one of the toughest things to really nail. Because I know as one of the developers of #Rect Dawn of Beginnings coming soon from Hell Legit Games, so that's one of the things that we really look at, and it's really hard to convey that in terms of hard numbers. In terms of coding, and what is feel? When people say things like floaty, it's too floaty, what does that mean? And so, yeah, I know that just goofing around that I've done in Midair, the feel of it is great. It's fun to just kind of to ski around, and the weapons feel good too. And I know that when Guitar Guy and I casted some of the games during the Kickstarter campaign, which people can go to the Archetype Studios YouTube and see some actual comp games with some of the great Tribes players of all time competing in it, and you may come away with the same impressions that I did just watching that. It's just a very exciting, and as DavidBowie said, I really like the emphasis on the disc or the ring, as they call it for copyright purposes, I suppose, but that more of an emphasis on that and less chain whoring, and just it makes for very exciting plays, and it makes for just good gameplay in a CTF situation, I think.
And the thing is, the chain it's still a great weapon. It's just a balanced weapon, and they did a couple things that do that. One is, it starts off with this slow rate of fire, and then it kind of speeds up. Another thing is you have to reload it, so it kind of gets up to top speed, and then you got to reload it pretty soon after that. And so it's just not always the best weapon all the time, and that was the problem in Tribes Ascend. It feels so much more like the old one, but it's actually still a very lethal weapon. You can still kill someone just a few bullets. So if you're accurate with it, you can still be deadly. But it's not the weapon for every situation, and that's what's great.
Also, something that seems very minor but is actually very important in terms of the weapon's usage, the fact that it's 100% inheritance, I think, is huge. Because in Tribes Ascend, the duels were AD, AD, AD. Because now, and the chains were 0% inheritance, of course. Now it's 100% inheritance. If you're strafing, your bullets are going to go with you. It's much, much harder to have those AD, AD duels. I rarely ever see them in Midair, if at all. it's much better to pull out one of your other two weapons and use them to pop someone on the ground.
Yeah, the chain, as we call it, Fixie just mentioned it to me, if they're planning overheat. Because right now the chain actually feels in a very good place. So as far as I know, it's just a thought to add to the chain gun. Maybe, maybe not. But as pugs are able with a certain patch this week, we've been playing around with it in a bit more competitive setting, and chaining is definitely a thing. However, when you come in, you grenade launcher, you ring, and you really only pick up the chain gun so far when people get low. And so for me, that just shows like you come in, you use all your weapons effectively. So balance-wise, it's already just great where it is.
And that's something I think that harks back to the older Tribes games where it was really a finishing weapon or kind of a chasing weapon. Someone's at half health or less and they're flying through the air, and that's when you pull it out. You wouldn't, if someone's on the ground in midair right now, the chain is not what you pull out when someone's at full health standing on the ground. Whereas in Tribes Ascend, you would just, they'd be 100% health and you just start 80 and just that's how you'd fight. But now it's really like you said, you need to get that initial damage off with an explosive weapon usually and use it in a more specific scenario. And I think that it feels pretty good. Like Application said, I don't know that I would add an overheat or make a lot of changes to it because I think it's in a good spot as a weapon. And I think if you added too many drawbacks to it, it might nerf it too much. And I think another thing is the ring is also better than the TA disc because it's not near as generous with your damage. So in terms of radius, so it's a lot harder to just ground pound people randomly. Like if you don't land the disc really close to them, you don't get very much damage at all. So it rewards people that are actually hitting close to the targets versus giving people plenty of damage for not even really being that close. So I think that's a good change as well.
Yeah, the AoE of a ring is pretty big, but it only does a little damage. That's really nice about it. But I do think it's a little bit too big because you can still you see someone skiing down a hill, mess them up with it with a knockback quite a bit. But still, yeah, I'm just not a big fan of big AoEs. Really. That's all, I guess. It's more of a personal thing.
Yeah, the thing that's nice though is that you can get the hits, but it's such a small amount of damage, so it's only like 10 hit points or something.
Yeah,
whereas if it was Tribes Ascend and you hit someone in that same radius, you'd be taking off, something like a fifth of their health. Whereas now you're only taking a very tiny fraction of their health. So I think that that's a good change. So yeah, you'll get the hit marker and you'll hit some damage, but it's almost like an irrelevant amount it's like a single chain gun bullet worth of damage.
Going back to the overheat mechanic, I think I agree. I think I would not want an overheat as it is right now. I really don't think the chain gun is in a bad place. Maybe, if anything, this is something they briefly chatted about before, but Legions had a cooldown mechanic. First, the chain gun had an overheat mechanic, which is where your spread would go everywhere after you fire for a bit. But they also had a cooldown mechanic, and the way you'd cool your weapon down is by going quickly, by traveling quickly. So that means the chain gun is not as good for ground-based dueling, but is rather good for chasing because you're moving quickly, or for capping, I guess. If they don't include an overheat mechanic, or if they do, they should definitely include a cooldown mechanic. But I think as it is right now, they might want to just include like a cooldown mechanic that maybe reduces the spread as you're chasing, because the spread is it's noticeable with the chain gun. But even then, I certainly don't think the chain gun needs any nerfs as it is right now. If anything, a nice buff would be good.
Yeah, the chain gun just, for me also, just needs to stay where it is right now. And like nobody's complaining about it being too strong or too underpowered. Like, don't get us wrong. You can definitely just whip it out and kill someone from 100 to 0 if he misses like 3 rings on you. But it does require some significant aim and what's it called? Like with the reload, indeed, like you really start to pin someone down with the chain gun. After 50 bullets, you have to reload. I have no idea how many seconds that is actually. But it's like I said, if you miss 3 rings, you can still kill someone with your chain. But if you are raining down hell on someone, and you also don't get him with 50 bullets, the reload is pretty quick. And that's the only thing that might need some adjustments. Because you reload in like below 1 second for sure. And then you can start going up again, and the speeding up of the chain gun right now is pretty quick. Which it should be.
Yeah, I think that because when you reload, you do have to speed up again. So I think that it's actually more than just the 1 second penalty of the reload. To get back up to full chain gun ability, it's actually a few seconds before you reload and get spun up again. So I don't know. I don't think it needs nerfing personally. I think it's, like you said, I think it's where it is right now feels really good. I think the ring, the chain, and even the sniper, I would want to see in the hands of some really top tier snipers to see how it is. Like, give it to a guy like Tailspin and see what he does with it, because maybe it is broken, but right now it does feel pretty good. But maybe it's just because, like I think even in TA they thought the sniper was fine because it was the devs playing with it and they weren't these super elite snipers.
Then you get somebody good, man.
You get somebody good and it breaks the game. So hopefully this isn't going to break the game because of it being a projectile. It's not like you can just wreck cappers from a million miles away with it, but we'll have to see when you give someone really good that weapon. But right now, at first glance, it seems pretty good.
Well, and one good thing about the game right now is somebody did point out that this is probably the earliest that Tribes pros have gotten into development of a Tribes-like game and been able to really get their hands dirty with it and make feedback. So you've got guys like, of course, Fire, who's a regular guest here on the show. He's a big chaser guy, right? So he's going to have a bug in their ear all the time about making chasing viable, which, as we saw in those casted matches, it certainly is. And so you've got some guys that definitely have the skill, and now once they get a few weeks in of just really working with sniper rifles and the disc launchers and stuff, then you really start to get a better impression of the spectrum of what's able to be done with these weapons. And also you get people that aren't, the hardcore players as much, that are also getting access. Because I know that they want to appeal to a wider range of players than some of the Tribes games of the past. It's already kind of a hard game, y'all. I mean, there's no getting around it. I mean, there's a learning curve involved. But, they have really expressed that they want to make it for casual players as well as, your hardcore competitive players a good experience. And that's where you can be at stuff like vehicles and turret farming, but they're way away from that so far. I think it's just pretty much at the LT stage right now at the moment.
Yeah. There has also been some talk on the forums about a game mode where you just have base, but no destructible like a generator or vehicle pad or inventory stations, like they can't be harmed. And that sounds to me like a really good casual pub style of game mode.
And let me ask you guys about this. One thing I did notice in those matches was that the fatties are pretty good. I mean, we saw a fatty cap or two. We saw people getting around pretty well in the big suits, and I know a lot of the guys in my crew are big fat suit people, so they were very happy to see that. What do you guys think about the different armor classes?
So I initially thought that the heavy with shield pack was way overpowered, and then I figured out about the blaster, and now I don't really think that as much anymore. But if you're trying to fight a heavy and all you have is like chain and ring, and he's got a shield pack, you're going to get absolutely destroyed. The shield pack is extremely powerful because it drains really slow and it can just eat a ton of damage. It's almost like I don't know if it's a 1-to-1 for damage, but it eats a ton of damage versus blowing your whole energy pack from like one disc or something. And so you can actually sustain for a long time. And if you have an inventory station, it can just keep getting your health back. A heavy can set up and kind of be annoying for a long time. But I found that you can just, with the finger blaster or whatever they call that thing, You can, I think that's, I mean, it's what it looks like, so that's what we're gonna call it. But
Yeah, I love
you
that.
can go finger blast these guys down pretty quick, and actually just a light can easily take out a shielded heavy, just moving around quickly and lighting him up with the blaster. So I think it might be okay. The one issue I have though is it's right now it's not really a meaningful choice as to which pack you use as heavy, because you just get the shield pack because it's so good. Why would you ever get anything else? And so, I think if you want to have meaningful choices in games, you need to have it so the different packs are actually like there's a reason to get, a shield pack or an energy pack over the other. But right now, there's no reason to get anything but a shield pack on a heavy.
Yeah, for sure. In my opinion, Blaster definitely needs a nerf, because we played like 3 games of base in a row, and everyone loves to run heavy currently because it is truly great. The mortar, it's so satisfying. Just the effect of it, the feel of it is really nice. But when you play 3 games of base in a row and just play as a light and run around with a blaster, and you just see the improvement of yourself in 3 games, and you can just completely wreck heavies. So that definitely needs some nerfing, in my opinion.
Well, see, to me, that's kind of like a form of balance. So you have, because a lot of people when they first pick this up, they're like, "Oh my god, heavies with shield are so OP. They're so OP. It's not fair." And that's, I played against them. I thought it wasn't fair. I played as one, and I was just killing a million people. I didn't think that felt very good. So I think it's important that there is some weakness there. I think the problem is that you, as a light player with the blaster, you're not giving up that much. You have to give up your grenade launcher, your railgun, but that's probably worth it to be a dedicated heavy killer. So there may be some tweaking that they need to do there, but I think that it is important that there's some way of taking down those shield heavies. So I'm glad that there's a way to do it, because otherwise they'd be broken.
For sure. But when you see a heavy incoming as a light, though, for me, personal experience at least, is I'll always get him. But once he gets set up, then the heavy is in advantage again. So for that purpose, it's pretty good balance. But I can definitely see in a proper setting of a pug or a competitive or whatever you want to call it, the light defense with the blaster that is on heavy duty killing can definitely we'll always get at least one heavy.
In terms of blaster nerfs, they might just want to make the energy drain higher, like how much energy it takes to fire. Because right now it really doesn't seem to be affecting your energy much at all, like if you're firing it.
Cool. Well, this is the kind of stuff that I know a lot of people have been wondering about. I mean, not everybody, of course, got into the early access, but yeah, just the player perspective is something that people have been, because it's really hard to tell. Sometimes, I mean, you can watch it and say, okay, yeah, that looks cool, but from the actual perspective of playing the game, these are all encouraging things, I think, and already they've been patching the game quite a bit.
Yeah, at least not the first patch, but the one they just did was awesome. In terms of quality of life stuff, like they, you used to have to, every time you set a new loadout, like every time a map changed, you'd have to create new loadouts, which got really old really fast. So now it saves your loadouts, and that minor change made a huge difference in quality of life, I thought. Also, the passive reload. I'm really glad that happened, because I think that everyone's just used to having passive reload now, and it feels lame after you've been, using your chain chasing someone for 2 minutes across the map, and then he's about to cap the flag, and you pull out your disc or your ring to finish him off, and you have to do the slow reload animation. So I'm glad they added the passive in.
Yeah, and you can really see in this patch that almost all the feedback within this, like the start of instant access, has been put in. You can find every line of in the patch. You can just go back to the forums and find a thread about it, and then see the feedback, and then them responding to it. So within the patch, that is, because they don't always respond to it, and that really, that's also it's a good feel that you see that happen.
Yeah, as a tester, it's nice to be able to see, your input put into actual like words or into actual in the actual game. It's really nice to see. It's also nice that they're being so receptive because not many companies are willing to listen to their fans.
And I think they're doing it the right way. So a lot of the people that are in it right now are either people that played the previous games at a high level, or they're people that care enough about Tribes games to pay all this money to get in. And so these people tend to care a lot about the game, and they're not just kind of random people showing up and saying, "Oh, I don't like this, get rid of it." And that was some of the sort of feedback and stuff clogging the forums in some of the other games, was just people kind of complaining they didn't really understand the games or whatever.
Oh yeah, the Tribes Ascend forums immediately came to mind when it
So they're being receptive to people that actually kind of know what they're talking about, and I think that's a winning formula, as opposed to either not being receptive at all or just having too many people just complaining and just knee-jerk fixing things that people that are just played the game for 2 hours are complaining about because they haven't figured out how to play yet. So I think that's a good way to do it. The only thing I worry about for this game, because I think they have the competitive part, they're doing all the right things for the competitive play, but they do have to make this game be able to appeal to brand new people, and that's going to be the hardest thing because Tribes is already very hard, and this is honestly much harder than Tribes Ascend. Just starting out, the way the skiing works, and there's no carving really. It is harder to learn how to control your character, and it's harder to hit with the weapons. So you don't get those easy kills all the time. Whereas in a game, Counter-Strike or something, a noob can kill a good player every now and then and kind of get lucky, get a kill. That's almost never going to happen in this game. Like a veteran player is just going to wreck a noob every single time. So between having trouble controlling themselves and getting killed a lot, it's going to be tough. And so how they ease people into that and kind of teach them and get them to learn to love the pain, that's going to be the challenge.
Yeah, you're right, man. And I know that if Bug Spray were here, he would probably point out that that's what they're hoping to do with some of the more traditional role-playing aspects of the old Tribes games where, I don't know, I liked turret farming, I'll admit it right here. I like doing shit like that. I like vehicles. They always used to rag on me. I was the caster that liked vehicles. So, oh, good, a Shrike came out. Oh, somebody's bringing a Beowulf. But having those roles in place too, and they're talking about some very interesting things with the tank-like vehicle, being able to maybe like anchor in a spot and be able to stabilize their shot a little more, and there's some other things that hopefully when they bring the more full spectrum of what the game will be like, that some of those people will have little niche roles that they can play that that don't involve 1v1ing somebody that's really good. But we're still a ways down the road on that.
Right. I think it'll be interesting to see where the competitive scene gravitates towards, whether it's base or LT, because in Tribes Ascend, even though when they made it possible to recreate LT, it never really took off. I mean, people would play it sometimes, these little mini tournaments and stuff, but everyone still really preferred playing base for competitive play.
Yeah.
So I wonder how that's going to play out in this game.
Well, as one of the guys that casted probably the only LAN LT Tribes Ascend tournament ever at QuakeCon, I can say that LT was a flavor of the month for about 2 months in Tribes Ascend, and I think the way that TA was set up was not really conducive to the LT style, to say the least. Just the movement, the maps, and the weapons, just the whole combination, it just really didn't mesh well with that LT style. And Midair, I think they're on the right track with just kind of starting out with a basic foundation of good gameplay, that feel thing again. And once you get that, then you can kind of expand upon that, because it's harder to to go back and say, well, we got all this other shit. Let's go back and try to make the game feel good. That does not work. I can tell you from a dev aspect that does not work. So they're really going about it the right way as far as from the bottom up, making it a good experience. So hopefully that will give it a little bit more appeal to your casual player as well too. Because like I said, it is a hard game. And it's a hard game style. I mean, none of these games were particularly easy compared to, well, it ain't Call of Duty. So, you're already kind of up against it as far as that goes. But if they can make something that has a compelling, just overall, and it's so nebulous to keep saying feel, but there it is. I mean, if you've got that, then that, I think, draws in a lot more people, and even on the less competitive side, hopefully for their sake and for the sake of the game. I have a good feeling about it.
And I think maybe that's the way to do it. I think, because honestly, if I just say right now, I would say it looks like LT is the ideal competitive mode. It already feels like it's in a pretty good spot. You could almost start playing it competitively, and it feels already better than Tribes of Sin LT ever felt. But I think right now the base feels underdeveloped, and I think it is. I think that they're focusing on the core aspects of the game, that movement, weapons, getting the feel down, and then kind of adding in those base features later. And I think base is their place where they can try to kind of appeal to everyone. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
And the Euros are just going to ban everything anyway, right? Sorry.
Well, I can definitely say that, like, with LT, it's already a game, and then when you hit base, you are reminded, oh yeah, we're pre-alpha. That's really a good way to put it, if you ask me, because base definitely needs some additions, because, for example, the medium class isn't in it yet, vehicles aren't in it yet, and that so far has made up for so many heavies flying around the map everywhere, just going in the base, and it's so hard to break them down once they all get in there. And for me, as a mostly LT player, because Legions and stuff, base definitely feels very to me. It's definitely just because they haven't added everything yet to it. Like, it isn't base yet. No, currently it is base maps with light and heavy. Have fun.
Yeah, what do you guys think about the maps so far? I mean, there's only a few, but and then they've got a lot more in the pipeline that they just haven't arted up or anything. But so far, they seem to have a pretty good variety.
The maps feel great right now. I'm gonna say that the maps have a really nice variety, and it's nice coming from Ascend. It's nice to see these bumpy maps. In the Ascend, everything was as smooth as baby's bottom. Everything was so smooth, other than Rocks of Storm, of course. But in this game, there's lots of little tiny hills everywhere. It's much more, like, if you were to take a height map, it's much more grainy, and I think that's great. It does a few things. It helps limit speed, which is really good, because in this game it's very easy to gain speed. So you need something to limit how long you can keep it. And it just gives you a lot of variety, a lot of options once you've learned how the movement works in this game. I think the maps are at a great start. I do think that they don't look all that great right now, except for, what's the map? Is it Verdant? Is that the one they fixed up all nice? That map looks pretty nice, but all the other maps are just lacking aesthetically, which of course is going to come with time. But in terms of skiing around on them, I think they're great.
Yeah, I'd agree with Qualm. I think, again, this is going back to more like Tribes 1, really, and somewhat Tribes 2 style maps, is what they feel like. Not near as much open space as Tribes of Sin maps. And I think that some people always said this. I think Greth was always the one saying this, that a big part of some of the issues with Tribes of Sin came down to the maps. And I think that the way they've designed the maps in this is going to help a lot with some of those things like the chasing and sniping and all that sort of balance. So I think I like what they're doing with the maps, but I would also definitely agree with Qualm that aesthetically they have a ways to go. I mean, Tribes of Sin maps, they didn't play great, but they did look pretty damn good. And these do not. And I don't know if it's just they need to put more doodads and stuff all over the map, because that one Verdant map with the leaves falling off the trees and everything, that one actually looks pretty cool. But some of them are just they almost look like a map from a game 15 years ago. They're like so empty and plain. So I know we're early alpha, pre-alpha, so they're not worried about that stuff right now. But part of that appeal to the masses kind of thing is your game has to look nice. No one wants to play a game that looks like crap. You take a game like Rocket League, which is just so basic, but it looks cool. So that's I think a really important factor for drawing people in and making this look like a real game and not just some like indie kind of early access type thing.
And they got several artists working on it, so yeah.
Yeah, it's how I see it though is like you said, it's pre-alpha, so it's very hard to judge it really. But if you look at Verdant, and if that's the standard that we can see the map grow into, then that's actually a pretty good promise.
Yeah, and Bowie, I'm glad you shouted out Greth because yes, he has very strong opinions on maps, and I feel like if they would have listened on some of this stuff on TA, they might have been in a different position. Who knows? But I can say that he is currently working on maps for #Rect, so we're giving him a chance to kind of put his ideas in motion. I mean, it's arena shooter, right? It's not a full-fledged, with crazy terrains and stuff. That comes later. We won't say any more than that. But yeah, it's been good to have his input on these things because he has he's thought about this stuff as much or more than anybody I can think of.
So one thing we haven't really talked about yet, and I'd be curious to hear everyone's thoughts, is the whole like capping versus chasing balance. I know I did a lot of capping in TA, and it was this sort of paper rock scissors thing where there wasn't really a lot of chasing you could do, and it was really just snipers versus cappers, and it just felt like crap. But so far, this feels better. I mean, it feels like the routes are a little more impromptu, and you can't build up to a bajillion miles an hour just doing this little route because there's no health packs or anything. And then because of that, it means that you don't have to make the sniper super strong, and you can actually have chasing, and the chasing so far feels really good. I'm just not sure how it's going to work when people get really good at the game. I'm a little worried that cappers could become really strong if they develop back to front routes and become sort of unchaseable, but I'd be curious what you guys' experience has been.
Even right now. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Bugs have been happening, mostly LT though. So first of all, like for LT capping, if you don't get like a shot on you while you touch down on the flag, if you just basically just get a grab on full health, you are home. And the same thing really goes for base maps, but that has mostly been publics. But if you do get that shot, then you're very chaseable, and it's a pretty good how do you say? It's a pretty good pretty good point to start off with, because if a Capra gets through clean, then I can see him just always getting home. That's a good, D didn't do their job really. Then a chaser having to chase a full health Capra down with the speed that he has because he wasn't stopped or anything. It's pretty hard right now because there's air strafing in the game, and it's very, very powerful. You can if you go full speed on for example, what I did in the game was I went 180 speed, which is somewhat high on a small map, and then with air strafing I can make a U-turn like 180 degrees, and then I lose about 40 speed, which makes me go to 140, and then have fun with chasing that.
The general air, I agree that I haven't really noticed that because I haven't tried to make big turns like that, but I certainly believe you. That's one of my complaints right now is how well you can move in air. I don't have an issue with, in terms of dueling, with how much mobility you have by using the jets in the air. I think that's fine. I think it's much better than TA. But I do have an issue with how much you have when you're not jetting, and to some it might feel insignificant, but when you're capping, when you're not jetting and you're real high up there in the air, it's really easy to adjust without using the jets at all. I think that should be nerfed a little bit. And of course, if you're doing full turnarounds like that, this isn't Legions. You can't just overdrive your way around. You should definitely be losing a lot more speed than that. So I agree with you there.
Yeah, that's a potential balance point, because right now you can do like a full on side to side route or something at high speed, or even almost like a front to back, and then turn it into a good route that's hard to chase. So I think that could maybe use some work. One thing I like what they did though is that unlike TA, as Qualm was saying, you can kind of move around in the air without burning jets. In this game, if you're holding any of your keys down while you're jetting, you're actually really bleeding energy and killing your speed. And I think that's a good thing. When I was first playing it, I thought, man, I'm really running out of jets really fast, and it's because I was holding down W because I'm used to doing that.
Yeah, Proj pointed this out in the forums. Yeah.
I saw that post and I was like, oh, okay, good PSA, because then, all of a sudden now wow, these jets are powerful and I can really start going fast. So once you get used to taking your hands off the keys, it's great. And you do have a tremendous amount of control in the air, but you really burn through your energy fast doing it. So there is a trade-off. So I don't think that needs to go away entirely. I think they just need to play with it some, as application is saying, to make it so you can't run routes where you can get a ton of speed going one direction and then just totally go another direction without a lot of loss there.
Cool. Well, yeah, like we said, it's a work in progress, and we're in their pre-alpha or pre-alpha. I don't know. The software development names are pretty meaningless by now, but suffice to say that it's still very much a work in progress. I think they're still looking at sometime next year as being when they're looking at the official release. And as we know, sometimes those dates, they're not setting them in stone for a reason, because you just never know. But I think everybody agrees that we're in a pretty good spot with it right now, and the fact that they are pretty quick in responding to what people are saying, and they're really looking at and they're watching these pugs, and they're listening to the people that they've got, and they've expanded the group of people that are playing what they've got. That bodes well for the future, I think. Any final thoughts on Midair before we move on to some of these other games?
Feels good.
Yep, it's a great start. Just got to make it appeal to the noobs, and then hopefully add in some sort of like ranked matchmaking or something so that the comp scene can kind of automate.
Same.
Cool. Well, shout out once again to Archetype Studios, Bug Spray, Mabel, the whole crew out there. And once again, congratulations for navigating through the Kickstarter, which, I don't know, Kickstarter, y'all. At this point in time, it is increasingly difficult to navigate through those particular waters. It is a difficult process, but they came out unscathed. And I think that's a wonderful thing. And shout out to everybody who backed the game and who backed the future of these FPS+Z games. I think Midair is definitely the front runner as far as potential games in this genre. But we've got some other ones. There are new challengers appearing and old challengers possibly coming back. There were rumors of the mysterious Smooth P coming back with Legacy FPS. Now, we were talking about Team Rabbit 2 earlier, and we've got a couple of possible Team Rabbit games, and Legacy was one of those. Now, the last I had heard was that Smooth P was working a very hectic full-time job somewhere in Bay Area hell, and so he didn't really have a lot of time to devote to the game. But there are rumors of his return. But I asked you guys before the airtime, and it's still pretty mysterious. So we don't really know, do we? But you got did any of you play Legacy at all?
Yep, I played a little bit, and it was definitely fun. I mean, I felt it wasn't quite where Midair is yet, but it was more than it had this. They had some of the basics in there, the basic weapons, the basic movement, and it all felt pretty good. And it was like, okay, this is a cool start. They just need to build a game around this.
I preferred the weapons in Legacy because they used a consistent inheritance across everything, and it felt really nice to use all the weapons in combination. They were all 100% inheritance, which might be I'm a little bit biased, but the fact that they were all the same made using each weapon, you'd be firing with one weapon, and you wouldn't have to really adjust how you aim to use another weapon. It felt really good. And in terms of movement, I liked the movement was really nice, which is important when you're using 100% inheritance weapons. So yeah, I hope that revival does happen. Last thing we heard anything about it was 2 months ago, but I am certainly down to play that game again if it comes back from the proverbial dead.
Yeah, we welcome the potential return of the Mad Genius Smooth Piece. So we'll keep y'all posted on what we find out about that one. But here's another one. And so I know that Legacy is done in Unity, which is a little bit more of a difficult thing as far as multiplayer goes, just from what little we know. But, there's a lot that you have to do with netcode and stuff. Lord knows not that UE4 is not without its problems. You can just ask Mabel about that, and if he were here, we would, and we'd get a very interesting discussion of netcode. But speaking of UE4, there is another potential game out. It's called Jetball, and again, this is the Team Rabbit 2 mechanics, which is basically, we keep saying Team Rabbit 2. We're assuming that people who would be nerdy enough to get through this far in this podcast know what that is, but it's basically you're shooting at a goal. It's kind of your Rocket League with Tribes mechanics. But we don't know much about Jetball. It has a website with a very basic template, and like I tried to click on the Twitter and the Facebook, and it went to twitter.com and facebook.com. So obviously they're very much in the larval stages, but they mention esports specifically, so they may really be going for more of a competitive angle on this. So I don't know. I like that particular kind of game mode, and the future sports kind of games. So I have high hopes that one of these works out, and failing that, of course, Midair. If they implement the jackpot mode, that is another potential cool thing as well. So we'll be keeping an eye on this one as well, Jetball. Arms of Telos, not much news recently on that. I know that Justin, the developer, has updated the website, and he's been going out and doing some PR stuff for it. And we were supposed to go to the Let's Play Gaming Expo a while back. We were invited. We didn't get to go, but then I noticed that he was there. I keep missing this dude. Justin, if you hear this, hopefully you'll be at QuakeCon, and we can chop it up, and maybe we'll get a little bit more of an exclusive on what's going on with Arms of Telos. Are any of you guys in the testing for that?
I am, but I've neglected helping out with testing for months now. When I played it, even way back then, it was in a really good place. In terms of how far along it was in development, it felt about as far along as Midair is now. Of course, it's a different game, so it's kind of hard to quantify that. But I've only heard good things, and he's actively attending conferences and getting testing. So I can only imagine it's doing well for itself.
Yeah, it's one of those titles that people look at, and I think that one will definitely have an appeal to casual people because it has a very unique look and style. And again, it's these are not easy games, but it looks really cool, and I like the for application. It does have a grappling hook mechanic.
Ooh.
So
yeah, I also played another sort of arena style shooter called Sonotic, and that had a grappling hook. And
yeah.
That was I've played that game a lot, and I enjoyed it a lot, especially Capture the Flag, Instagib on it. And I've watched a recent video of him, of the YouTube channel. He's been updating that for a little bit, at least the last video has been 3 weeks ago. And it does, I have to say, it interests me so much, but as a game that goes out there and like hits the masses, that I'll have yet to see, because it is very, very hard for sure for someone to just pick that game up.
Yeah, and so yeah, hopefully we'll get to hang out with him and chop it up and find some more information about that and bring it to you guys, and maybe have him on the show here coming up sometime in the future. He's talked to us before, and we'll have to bring him back again. Titanfall 2. Oh boy. Did anybody is anybody thrilled and excited about this?
No.
I mean, it was
No.
yeah, no. It was fun for a little bit, but no.
It was fun for a little bit. Yeah, for like a month or two, and then everybody just kind of just kind of quit
Call
playing.
of Duty with jetpacks, and they never really had much of a comp scene.
Titanfall it does a lot of things right, and it's a really like interesting. The way the game is done is very interesting. It could make for a really good game. However, where we are in FPS+Z, we're in this niche genre that's hard for people to pick up. Titanfall is the opposite. It's very easy for people to pick up Titanfall, but as a result, that I don't want to say it lowers the skill ceiling. I think it does, but I think it's too much of a buzzword. It makes it such that doing really cool things like you can in any Tribes game is very difficult, or it's just not right in Titanfall. An example, and what was the catalyst for me stopping to play the game last time, I tried to take it seriously. I fully leveled up my character and was doing some comp games, but their CTF mode, first of all, they removed the CTF mode for about a week because it just wasn't getting a lot of playtime.
I remember that.
Yeah, that was a really dumb decision. I'm not a big fan of the devs already. And then they have this mechanic where, of course, the mechanic in the game is wall running, right? There's this mechanic where if you're jumping anywhere near a window, you're magnetized into it if you're looking anywhere in its general direction. And that made some routes very, very difficult to run, because you have to look quite far away from the window to not proc that. It's little things like that, little tiny handicaps like that help new players get into the game, really limit how far a really good player can take the game's mechanics. So I'd like to see Titanfall 2 do well, but I only think they're going to make it even more friendly to the new players, so I don't have high hopes.
Yeah,
I agree, man.
For me, Titanfall 2, when I saw the trailer on E3, I was actually like, okay, cool. Let's see what they do with it. And then today I got on here and I heard Smart Pistol is back, and then I am already like, okay, whatever.
Yes, the Smart Pistol. Yeah, wall running is a tough thing. Yeah, and I know that like in #Wrecked, we've got it to where you can do a thing where you can either hold down Shift and you'll stick, or you can toggle that, or you can make it do it automatically, because some people are going to be accustomed to that. So you have some control over whether you're actually doing the wall running part or not. But yeah, the hope, I think, is that if it is an entry level type of game, then maybe the masses that play it, some of those will say, well, I like this style, I want something that has some more depth to it, and then it leads them to some of these other titles that we're discussing. One thing that they definitely need to do, and this was my big beef about it, put a fucking spec mode in the thing, for fuck's sake, people. I mean, you have guys like Warwitch and Freaky, two of the best in the game as far as casting, and they were doing what we called the Anderson Cooper casting, where they were just kind of in the game and they're just like hiding out on rooftops, and it's like, okay, he's got the flag and he's coming over there. Okay, back to you, Warwitch. Okay, I'm over here and he's coming this way. And they would occasionally, die in battle doing that and stuff. They did their best with what they had, but I think you really... And this is one thing that I'm glad that Midair is doing from the start. You got to have a good spec mode. If you want a real competitive scene, if you want something that is that people can watch, you have to give them the tools with which to watch. And so that's something that this is a AAA title. It's something they really need to address. But yeah, Kind of mixed feelings just based on the first one. I guess the question becomes, do they take the lessons of Titanfall 1 and apply them properly to Titanfall 2? We will await the response, because we don't really know much about the game yet, other than, we saw a trailer and there's robots, just like the first one. And let's see, what else? Novakin. I don't know. I haven't heard much about the development of that, but that one looked pretty interesting. That's more of a Tribes 1 type of skiing, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I found about it 5 days ago, and then I watched, and it has jump skiing as a mechanic, and yeah, that puts me off, to be honest.
I've been in the Novakin testing for a while, and I've just been kind of messing around on empty servers, skiing around. And the skiing does feel nice. It feels very Tribes 1-ish, but I think Midair nails that. I think all the niches this game could fill would be filled by Midair tenfold. I do like their GUI design, which is a really shallow thing to think about, but I really do like it, especially compared to Midair, which feels incredibly basic right now.
I don't think it's shallow at all, man, because as you guys were talking about earlier, some of these things they're polish issues, but they're things that your more casual players are going to look at first. What does the HUD look like? Is it, unobtrusive? Does it give me all the information? And there's so much of that plays into, how a game is received. Are the graphics badass or not? They're very superficial in terms of gameplay, especially for the type of hardcore people. They're going to play these games for hours and hours, and they don't really pay much attention to that stuff. They're going to turn off all the super duper graphics settings and put it in potato mode so that they can see better and things like that. But for mass appeal, they really are something that you have to look at, and so that's a good sign for that. I think it's just a good sign that we have multiple titles in this genre to talk about. There was a time when it's just like it wasn't like that for a while, but now with as we said, pretty much the demise, I suppose, of Tribes of Sin, there's a big gap in the FPS+Z genre, and there's a lot of contenders looking to fill it, and they're good contenders, y'all. So I'm very pleased with where we're headed, and hopefully in the upcoming Z-Axis podcasts we'll have a lot more to talk about and a lot more to share with you guys on what's happening with all of that. And with that, I think we're pretty close to the end here. Final thoughts and shout outs from everybody. Application, any final thoughts, shout outs you would like to add?
Like I said, Midair is great. Give it a look. Feels very nice. Narc is a memer. And yeah, that's it.
Just down Jamie this whole podcast.
Oh my God! Well, thanks for being here, man. We appreciate your thoughts and your insights on today's show. It's been good to have you, David.
I also have to say, for Legions players, definitely look at Midair, because Legions is. The moment Midair came out, our pugs died instantly, like they're gone. So I know that there's also some out there that are floating around that are like, Midair, yes or no, and then in return just have nothing to play because Legions isn't happening. But Midair feels so good, and it feels very fast. And I know that most Legions players had issues with that. Like, is it fast enough for me to still get hooked on it? And it definitely is.
Cool. Good news indeed. DavidBowie?
Thanks for having me on here. It's been fun chatting about the game, and shout out definitely to the Midair devs. Game is great so far. And even the community is pretty good so far. Looks like Prod just decided to not be an asshole for this game and be kind of like the beneficent nice Prod or something, which is interesting. But overall, yeah, it's like the game is really fun, and I think there's a lot of potential here, and I think the devs are going about it the right way. I love to see them just keep doing what they're doing. Eventually make the game kind of prettier and build in like automated matchmaking, all that sort of thing. And I think the game could have some real potential. But yeah, just shout out to, I guess, my buddies over in the Zaps and Egocentric Discords, Mumbles, whatever they're on these days, and hopefully we can get some more keys out or some way to get people into early access for a little bit cheaper than $200 and get some more people in there, get some pugs going. But yeah, thanks again for having me on.
Right on. Yeah, Proj is a good dude. Don't let him fool you. I always am afraid I'm blowing his whole shtick and persona by saying that. But yeah, he's always been very insightful and cool when we've had him on the show. And hopefully we'll have him back to talk a little more about Midair and some other things. Oh, I'd have one thing to ask you, DavidBowie. Now, if I'm not mistaken, you actually played in one of the most famous games of all time, 4chan versus Reddit. Yes, the Jetball. Is there any chance of perhaps having a rematch of that when Midair releases?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I sure we'd be down to do that. I mean, we've done it anytime during TA. I think most of the guys on our team ended up going on to be pretty damn good. I think they had Seth stuck around for the other guys, but I don't really remember any of the other ones that really played comp. But yeah, 4chan wants to get some people together. I'm sure I could find some folks that would play against them.
Cool. The gauntlet has been thrown down. So there you go, folks at VG, A, R9K, whatever. Yeah, let's make that happen. Qualm, your final thoughts and shout-outs, man?
Yeah, shout out to Winters and Fixtures for always putting out such a wonderful podcast. It's always great to have. Oh, you're welcome. Oh, thanks to the Midair devs for making a good game. Looking forward to seeing where you guys take it next. If you guys are bored while waiting for Midair to come out, check out The House in Fata Morgana on Steam. It's on discount right now. It's a good read. Yeah, so shout outs to you guys. Shout outs to fans, really.
Yes, we love the fans, and yeah, I definitely want to shout out to everybody who keeps watching and listening and following the Z-Axis podcast, and we'll keep doing them as long as there is news to bring you, and it's been thrilling to see that there has been news to bring you. We'll keep doing that. I want to shout out to my fellow developers at Hell Legit Games. So we're working very hard on #Wrecked Dawn of Beginnings. We've been kind of in radio silence for a minute or two because we're working on some pretty cool things, but we've done so much back-end work. We completely rewrote the UE4 player controller. We're not using any of the stock stuff anymore, so it's really helped with the movement and the overall, again, the feel of the game. We're doing some things with art that I think will come as a shock and awe surprise to many people, and hopefully we'll be able to announce some of that stuff. We'll be at QuakeCon in August, and so you can hit us up there, and hopefully by that time we'll be doing the Steam Greenlight that I said a year ago to hundreds of people. Oh yeah, we're going to be at Steam Greenlight next month. And a year later, I think we're going to make that. So we wanted to get a lot of the basic things in place and have a pretty good demo for everybody before we did that. And I think we're very, very close. So thanks to everybody for their patience on that. And again, thanks to Application, to Bowie, to Qualm for being here today. Thanks to Fixtious, who, maintains the website and the interest and the cast itself. We appreciate everything he does behind the scenes. He works quietly in the shadows, but he works hard. So thanks to Fixtures. Thanks to all of you who have watched, and we will see you next time on the Z-Axis podcast. I am Winners with the One, and we thank you. We'll see you next time.